Let's start with a simple fact. For you, for me, for every one of us, consciousness is literally everything. It's the only reality we'll ever know. But how does it happen? How does the activity of billions of tiny neurons firing inside our skulls generate this entire Technicolor 3D experience of being you right here, right now? Well, we're about to dive into one of the greatest remaining mysteries in all of science.
That incredible quote comes from neuroscientist Anil Seth, and he's talking about his experience with general anesthesia. Now think about that for a second. When you wake up from a deep sleep, you feel like time has passed, right? But coming out of anesthesia, that's totally different. You could have been under for 5 minutes or 5 decades. There was simply no you there to experience it, just total oblivion. It's like this modern magic trick of turning a person into an object and then back again. And it really shows you just how precious and frankly how weird our conscious reality truly is.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How does the brain do it? How does it build this entire world that we experience? We tend to think of our senses as these perfect, crystal clear windows, giving us a direct and accurate picture of what's out there. But what if that's not how it works at all? What if your reality is actually being built from the inside out?
Okay, to start unraveling this whole thing, let's look at something we totally take for granted: color. We see a blue sky or a red apple, and we just assume that blueness and redness are objective properties of the world. But as we're about to see, they're not. Color is one of the absolute best examples of how your brain actively constructs your reality rather than just passively receiving it.
You've got to remember this. Back in 2015, this one single photo of a dress went completely viral, and it basically broke the internet. Why? Because millions and millions of people, all looking at the exact same image, had a fundamentally different conscious experience of it.
So what did you see? Was it blue and black, or was it white and gold? And here's the wild part. There is no right answer, because the whole point is that the exact same sensory information, the same pixels on a screen, produced 2 totally different perceptions. This whole thing brilliantly illustrates a crucial point. The colors you see are not objectively out there in the world. They're an interpretation, a story, created by your brain. So how is that even possible? Well, the physics behind it is pretty fascinating. What we call visible light is just this teeny tiny sliver of the full electromagnetic spectrum. Our eyes have receptor cells that are sensitive to just 3 different wavelengths within that sliver. And from that incredibly limited, frankly pathetic amount of data, our brain conjures up the millions of different colors we experience. Color isn't objectively real. It's a useful invention that helps us navigate the world.
So this idea that the brain just invents our experience, it builds into this incredibly powerful theory that explains not just color, but pretty much everything we perceive. The neuroscientist Anil Seth calls this the controlled hallucination. Yeah, it sounds pretty wild, but it's a profound new way of thinking about how perception actually works.
So what on earth does that mean? Well, just picture your brain. It's locked inside this dark, silent, bony vault, your skull. All it has to go on are these ambiguous electrical signals that are coming in from your senses. They don't have little labels on them. They don't have color or sound attached. The brain just has to make its best guess about what caused those signals. So your conscious experience, it isn't the raw data coming in. It's the brain's best guess, its prediction of what's out there.
It basically works like this. First, your brain is constantly, and I mean constantly, making predictions about the causes of its sensory signals. It's essentially saying, okay, based on everything I've seen before, I think this is what's happening. Second, the actual sensory signals arrive from your eyes and ears. Third, the brain compares its prediction to what's actually coming in, and it updates its prediction to make it a better fit. And fourth, and this is the absolute key, your conscious perception is that updated prediction. We don't perceive the world directly. We perceive our brain's best model of the world.
Now, this idea doesn't just apply to sight and sound. Nope, it goes deeper. It extends to our deepest feelings, and it really challenges that old metaphor of the brain as some kind of computer. Our brains aren't just processing information. They are deeply, fundamentally intertwined with our living, feeling bodies.
To really get this, let's talk about emotion. Back in the 19th century, the psychologist William James used this great example. Imagine you're walking in the woods and you suddenly see a bear. How does that feeling of fear actually happen? Well, the common sense answer might not be the right one.
So on the left, you've got the common sense view. You see the bear that causes you to feel fear, and then your heart starts pounding. Makes sense, right? But James flipped this whole idea completely on its head.
His theory on the right says you see the bear and your body immediately reacts. Your heart pounds, adrenaline starts pumping. Your brain then perceives these bodily changes in the context of seeing a bear, and that perception is the feeling of fear. It's another inside-out process. We don't run because we're afraid, we feel afraid because our brain perceives our body getting ready to run.
And this is exactly why that old metaphor of the brain as a computer is starting to really show its limits. Your body isn't just some meat robot carrying a processor around. As this quote explains so perfectly, brains evolved for bodies. Their most fundamental job is to keep the body alive and well. Your mind, your consciousness, it's not separate from your physical, biological self. It's profoundly embodied.
So let's recap. If our perception of the outside world is a controlled hallucination, and our emotions are just perceptions of our inner bodily state, what does that mean for our sense of self? Who are you in the middle of all this?
Seriously, think about it for a moment. What's the one thing about being you that you hold on to the tightest? Is it your memories, your personality, that sense of free will? We all have this really strong, intuitive feeling that there's a single, continuous me right at the center of our experience. But what if that, too, is just another kind of perception?
Well, the evidence is suggesting that the self isn't a single solid thing at all. Instead, it seems to be a collection of different perceptions all bundled together. Perceptions of your body, your memories, your emotions, your social identity. And for most of us, most of the time, this bundle feels totally unified. But under certain conditions, like in some neurological disorders or even in a lab, these different aspects can actually come apart, revealing that the unified self is just another one of the brain's clever constructions.
So the big takeaway here is that the self is not a thing, it's a process. You are changing all the time, but because the changes are so slow, you don't perceive them. It's kind of like that old philosophical puzzle, the ship of Theseus. It gets repaired plank by plank at sea, and eventually it's a completely new ship, but at every single moment it's still the same ship. And what's really wild is that this cutting-edge scientific view lines up almost perfectly with ancient ideas from spiritual traditions like Buddhism, which have been saying for centuries that the self is an ever-changing process, not some permanent soul.
And all of this leads us to a final and, honestly, a pretty profound thought. If we worry about losing ourselves to aging or to illness or to some radical new technology, maybe we can find some comfort in this idea. That solid, unchanging self we're so afraid of losing? Well, it's an illusion. It was always just a process, a continuous transformation. It was never there in the first place to be lost. And understanding that might just be the first step to truly understanding who and what we really are.